Last night, I recorded a video, which is nothing new. I record a lot of videos. So this one ended up being around 45 minutes long. Now, typically the videos I record tend to be pretty long, and then I'll just cut them down into usable footage that people can actually understand what I'm saying. And a lot of this is kind of self-imposed because I don't write a script. I don't really have bullet points. I just kind of fire from the hip and see what happens. There's pros and cons to that, of course, but this one was it wasn't bad, but it's a little bit lost in the narrative. So I wanted to revisit the topic and hopefully record a not 45-minute long version of this piece, and that way it's palatable, enjoyable, interesting, coherent to some degree, and I hope you can enjoy it. I just had to pour some more coffee, and that should help. The reason behind this video was I had a bit of an opinion, okay? Now this is odd for me. I'm not a very opinionated person. I'm sure if you watch my videos, you could probably tell that I'm not a guy who has a lot of feelings about things, and if I do, I don't really share them. I can't even get through that with a straight face. And if I did have opinions, I would not share them on my YouTube channel. Okay, sorry, jokes aside, I'm a very opinionated person about very random things, and this is one thing that kind of struck me as a bad take that I wanted to share my perception on, and then also kind of just open up a dialogue, hopefully. So this is coming at us from Petapixel. Now before I get into it, I just want to say that Petapixel does a really good job accumulating a wide source of news in the photography world, from digital to analog. They cover it all. There's a lot of really good information there. So if you've not checked out Petapixel, I'm sure most of you have, but if you haven't, I do recommend them. The article is titled, "The Rollei 35AF is in the midst of a No Man's Sky redemption arc." So for the uninitiated, No Man's Sky was a video game that I think came out in 2016 or somewhere in that time period, and before its release, it was pumped up as a completely new video game experience. You were going to be able to travel through the stars to an infinite amount of different planets that were generated through use of some kind of algorithm. There'd be wildlife, there'd be vegetation, all of it would be unique to each planet. But it kind of landed and was a bit of a dud. Part of that, I think, was due to the release schedule being kind of advanced when the team wasn't ready to fully release it. There's a whole lot of different articles talking about the failings and whatever. But the more important thing is that from the release to now, Hello Games, the studio behind the game, has spent the whole time fine-tuning the game, making it work, making it be what they initially wanted it to be. And allegedly, if you boot up the game now, it's pretty good. It's definitely not nearly as popular as it was upon launch, but the game is much more full and complete in the current state than it was initially. So that's cool. The reason why this article even caught my interest to begin with is because nobody really talks about the Rollei 35AF except for Petapixel. They seem to have contacts within Mint and are able to get some kind of interviews, and they kind of promote more of Mint stuff, which is good, because otherwise we wouldn't know a lot of the things that are going on. I'm not super up to date though, to be honest. I could be missing a newsletter here or there. I could be missing Instagram posts, but just from a kind of cursory perspective, we don't really hear a lot from Mint. So it's good that Petapixel is able to provide this information. It also caught my eye because I am very keen on these really bizarre comparisons. I think it's hilarious. I love being able to compare one thing to a completely unrelated thing, and in the process of a 10, 18-minute long video, try to convince not only myself, but hopefully the viewer, that the comparison I'm making is justified, sensible, and works for the direction of the review that I'm trying to submit to you. I think that's great. So I was intrigued. I was I would love to hear this redemption arc. So further background, the Rollei 35AF is a film camera produced by Mint, which is a Chinese-based company that's kind of known in the space for producing replica camera systems. They'd acquired the ability to produce the Rollei 35 model off of someone else who had, I believe it was a Chinese company before them. They got the rights to produce that body, and then they kind of not going to say glued on, but they put a autofocus system into the camera body and called it a new thing. It was released a few months after the Pentax 17, and for a lot of people that were a little disappointed with the Pentax 17's, half frame nature, the Rollei 35AF appeared to be the next best thing. However, there was about a $300 to $350 price difference between the two systems, and the Rollei 35AF kind of landed without a trace. There was not really a whole lot of clamor, not nearly as much as the Pentax 17. In part because I think there was a delay to the release, but that's important that we'll get back to in a bit. This article, though, points out the major flaws in the Rollei 35 initial production batch. Things like the shutter button not feeling great, the shutter just not working sometimes, a lot of lack of tactile feedback, the advance mechanism feeling bad, the construction of the cameras being not very good, and then most worryingly, they end the long list of issues that the camera has with, most irritatingly, the lack of filters. I could be wrong here. In fact, I'm very happy to admit if I am wrong. Unless the phrasing most irritatingly is something like, when you break your arm, like it hurts. It just really hurts. No matter what you do, if you fall, you trip, whatever. The pain is so overwhelming that you're just kind of focused on the pain. And I hope that I get better someday. It's just like immediate pain. But if you stub your toe, like on a coffee table or on a door frame or on a bed frame or anything like that, just like it's painful for sure, but there's also like this mixture of frustration of like, God, I can't believe I did that. How did I not see that? Almost in a way where while it's not as painful as the broken arm, it's more irritating than the broken arm because it's a mild inconvenience as opposed to a broken arm. Like if you break your arm and you tell someone, hey, I can't hang out with you, I broke my arm. Of course, everybody understands, feel better. Hey, I can't hang out with you, I stubbed my toe. Really? Okay, well now you've got to go to mini golf with a stubbed toe and nobody cares that your putt swing isn't very good because your toe's stubbed. That's kind of my perception. Like, unless it's written in that way, I have a hard time with how it's laid out. Because what I'm reading is a long list of like actual fundamental flaws in the camera system and then like a mild inconvenience. Oh, I can't put filters on the camera. Which, like, if you want to use filters, and I know that the Rollei 35 has a long history of filtered photography by virtue of it being a zone focus system. You aren't looking through the actual lens, so you can put on all kinds of crazy filters to do black and white photography and so on and so forth. So, like, sure, like that is a part of the camera system, filters. However, it needs to be raised that this was an $800 to potentially $850 camera system that the article admits didn't work occasionally. The shutter didn't fire. The exposure meter didn't work. The build quality was inconsistent. And they go on to say that they've produced their 5th production batch. In fact, Mint posted a blog post like a few months ago talking about, hey, we got the 5th production batch. We've really fine-tuned the camera. It's much better than the first batch, and we've fulfilled all the pre-orders. Now, a few notes on that. I do still know some people that have not received their pre-ordered Mint Rollei 35AFs. I could be getting incorrect information from them. That's possible. I have heard from a couple people that that's the case. I've heard from a shop that that's the case. And whether it's like just kind of got lost in the shuffle, that happens, and okay, fine, all good. But I do think it's worth pointing out that, like, okay, great, you've fulfilled all the pre-orders, but I've still heard from people that they've still not received those pre-orders. Concerning, but okay. Beyond that, though, what I'm hearing is if you invested early into the system, if you were excited about the Rollei 35F, because say you really like the Rollei 35, but the zone focusing is difficult and this autofocus thing is going to be a massive improvement. I'm going to buy this new thing. I'm very excited. You save up your money, you buy it, and it's terrible. It doesn't work, or it like works but feels bad in the hand, or any of these other issues, I would imagine, at least from my perspective, that reading, hey, we got that finally figured out, feels a little bit like an insult. Punishment's not the right word, but kind of like a punishment for supporting them in the early days there. And this kind of begins to broach my initial frustration with the title of the article and the kind of track that the article goes down, where it's comparing it to a video game. And fair enough, No Man's Sky launched and was very disappointing for a lot of people. But that's a video game. You can do like firmware updates, software updates, whatever. I don't really know video games all that much, but I know you can like download updates, bug fixes, new additions. They've got like DLC stuff that you can like add on to the game to like flesh it out more. Like there are things that you can do because it's not a physical property. I think a more apt comparison would be something like, maybe not this extreme, but the most notable car recall I can think of is like the Takata airbag situation. If you're unfamiliar, like back in the day, these car manufacturers were using these airbags from another company called Takata and basically create some kind of explosive claymore charge in your car. So if you got in an accident, instead of getting this explosion of big white floof hitting you, potentially breaking bones, airbags are really dangerous. There's got to be a better way, but still. Instead of getting that, it would be these like fragments of shrapnel that would fly at you, like a claymore. It's terrible. In order to avoid mini lawsuits and everything else that kind of becomes accompanied with accidentally blowing up your customers, they issued a recall. If you had a car from this year to this year, whatever, free warranty, take it to a dealership, they'll replace the airbag. You can't really digitally update an airbag through the cloud. I'm not very tech savvy, but I'm pretty sure that's not a thing you can do. If your video game doesn't work, you can update that as time goes on. Now, to be fair, Mint has made adjustments to the 5th production model to accept filters, and they're offering a free shipping option for another filter magnetic attachment for all of the other production models. So that's kind of cool. Like they're kind of trying to make modifications however they can in order to increase the usability of their camera systems. No issue with that. However, this kind of goes back to my previous issue with the framing of the issues of the camera, where the lack of filters was kind of heralded as this is the main problem, when I just don't think that it is. And because in the person who wrote this article, because in their mind, well, Mint is looking to make an adjustment to be able to allow the use of filters through all their cameras, well, they've done a great job. They've really bought the fans back. I don't view that as like the biggest issue. I think there's like fundamental flaws in the camera system. I've only had a few conversations with people who have shot with the Rollei 35. I've held it myself. I've shot with it, but I've not shot film through it. I just like advanced and pressed the shutter, whatever else. Okay. So I don't really have the whole scope of data to go through. But I will tell you that of the 3 people I know personally, I've talked to personally, who have shot it, one got one of the first ones, used it for a bit, really didn't like for a week, didn't like it, sold it. The other one borrowed one, didn't really enjoy it, didn't understand like the focusing system. It had decent images, but it wasn't really fully in focus, because the other main issue with these is that the pressure plate to hold the film in place is inconsistent at times, meaning that you're not getting a full flat focus plane. They're getting like softness in some of the edges and whatever else. The other guy I talked to shot with it for a little bit and never really fully got into it, ended up selling it as well. 3 people I've talked to, which I understand is only 3 people, but this is not for lack of trying. I do like to ask people, like, what do you think about the Pentax 70? What do you think about the Rollei 35AF? I think for all of the issues that people had with the Pentax 17, everyone can kind of acknowledge that it's a unique camera. It's not something like anything else. There's nothing really to compare it against. Even my initial pushback was predicated on what I was wanting it to be and not what it actually was. And because I was not able to fully appreciate what it was, I was overlooking what it represented. And while it still might not be like my cup of tea, it's not my favorite camera in the world, I can still acknowledge that there is definitely an audience for it. I've talked to people that have really loved using the Pentax 17, and that has helped me grow to appreciate it even more because I'm able to understand their perspective and just kind of enjoy their joy of the camera. Versus the Rollei 35AF, again, granted, 3 people that I've talked to, none of which were all that excited. When I picked it up, it felt completely hollow, like there was nothing going on inside the camera. However, when you advance it, it feels like you are breaking whatever small mechanisms exist in the camera. Then firing the shutter leaves very little feedback. It's like this really spongy, mushy shutter system. And there's no way of telling what's in focus and what's not. But predominantly the issue resides in the fact there are quality control issues. I think it's admirable that Mint has tried to make adjustments over the last year, but my question remains, why was this not adjusted beforehand? Why was this not brought up in the R&D process before? I understand they're a small team, but like, you didn't test it? Like, you didn't... Like, these are just, in my mind, pretty obvious issues. Like, these are major concerns. Even if it is just like 1 in 100, well, who's to say that these improvements that they're making in this 5th production batch are going to improve on those minimal odds? Like, you could still get one that isn't working super well. So that's kind of an issue that I have there. Circling back to the article itself, I just think it's very minimizing to look at the totality of the issues that have been flagged with this camera system and say, no, it just kind of all came down to the filters. I just don't think that that's entirely accurate. I feel like that's kind of overlooking the forest for the trees. It is good, it's admirable that such a small team is working to produce a more accommodating system, but I also think that we should be able to acknowledge that this shouldn't have really happened in the first place. As I mentioned, I'm pretty sure there was a delay in the release of the camera. What was the rush? Delay it a little bit more. Fix those fundamental problems. And if it ends up being like a year of delay, I think that people would be generally more interested in a better quality system, even if it is a year late. I mean, Analog Amsterdam did the same thing. They pulled the AF1 and they pushed the release back a little bit because they're having issues with the shutter and all the other things with that. I think because of that, and because of their communication with their audience, they have instilled a lot more confidence in me, a consumer of this product, and more excitement in the product and what it could potentially be, as opposed to the Rollei 35AF, where you don't really hear much about it, and then the little bits that I was hearing from people was not good, either because they have shot with it or not good because they never got it. And now I'm getting like this article that's like, oh, it's actually really great, and they should be celebrated for correcting their mistakes. And I'm not saying that we should crucify them for having an oopsie. Everybody does. I think that's completely fine. I just think it's really kind of frustrating because the film photography community is so ripe with very passionate and dedicated people. People that put a lot of money and time investing in something that they love so deeply. And I think when I see a product like this, fails to launch in a way that really instills confidence in the brand and the product itself, and then told like, no, it's all good though, you're fine. That kind of bothers me because it's not fine. It sucks. It sucks. And to not really see any acknowledgement from Mint, to not really see like any kind of replacements being occurred other than like, oh, we're just going to send you a little magnetic clip so you can have a filter now. What about the terrible shutter button? What about the inconsistent shutter control? What about the autofocus issues? And I understand that they have a return window and all that stuff, so if you get it and you don't like it, you can return it. But I think most people would have just preferred to get a good camera on Jump Street as opposed to waiting over a year and getting it now. A loose string of thoughts that I have that are kind of tied into comparing it to a video game I don't think is entirely fair, kind of sweeping under the more fundamental flaws of the camera system and instead choosing to focus on the filter exception, I think is also a little bit more charitable than is necessarily deserved in this instance. But I also, again, am more than happy to be wrong. So if you or anyone you know has been shooting with the Mint Rollei 35AF and you absolutely love it, please send me an email. Like, genuinely send me an email. I would love to get some like positive feedback from the camera system because I feel like everything I've heard from this point has been either crickets or very apathetic. I personally could really use some alternative perspectives. Or if you didn't like the camera, shoot me that email as well. I want to get a better idea of how people actually felt about it, because at this point I just feel like there's been very little feedback, at least from where I'm sitting. So shoot me an email, please. I really appreciate it. I love to chat and just kind of broaden my horizons here. Final notes, again, nothing against Petapixel, nothing against the author of the article. I just have some critiques that I feel like are relatively fair. And if you feel like these are unfair criticisms, if you feel like I kind of missed the mark, again, feel free to leave a comment down below. Just keep it, kind. My mom reads the comments. But regardless, I appreciate you all watching, and I hope this made sense. I think this is a lot more concise. What are we at here? That's okay. Better than 45. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it as always. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you on the next one.